It's been almost a year now since I last spoke to my parents or my brother. And I don't mean we're just taking a break. I mean, it's done. Finished. My brother, Caleb, is currently sitting in federal custody, awaiting trial for wire fraud, identity theft, and tax fraud, crimes he committed using my professional credentials from my parents' basement. My parents, who co-signed his second failed venture and then, inevitably, lost their home, now exclusively blame me for everything. They called me dead to them, a phrase that used to sting, but honestly? I told them I'd been dead to them since I was 16. And they just hadn't noticed because they were too busy watching Caleb. It's a harsh truth, but it's the only truth I know now. And if you're wondering how a family gets to a place like that, well, buckle up. Because this story didn't start with an IRS agent knocking on my door. It started decades ago, with a simple pack of mechanical pencils and a tenfold promise that was never, ever kept. You see, for as long as I can remember, I, Lucas, have been the family workhorse. My older brother, Caleb, on the other hand, he was always the visionary. Which, looking back, was just family code for someone who'd never held a job longer than 6 months but always had $1 million idea that required someone else's money. The favoritism in our house was so obvious it would make a soap opera writer tell you to dial it back. Caleb was the golden child, the one who could charm his way out of anything. I was the backup kid, the one they had just in case the first one didn't work out. Let me paint you a picture of my childhood. When Caleb flunked out of algebra, my parents hired him an $80 an hour tutor. When I struggled with geometry, my mom would just hand me a textbook and say, "Figure it out, Lucas. You're the smart one." That became the theme of my entire existence. Caleb gets support. I get expectations. Christmas was a masterclass in this. Caleb would get the latest gaming console, designer clothes, whatever he'd been whining about for months. My pile? Practical gifts. Notebooks for school. Socks. Maybe a gift card if I was really lucky. "You're so mature," Mom would say. "You understand that experiences matter more than things." Sure, Mom. That's why Caleb's getting an Xbox 360 while I'm unwrapping a pack of mechanical pencils. The double standards went beyond gifts. Caleb totaled Dad's car drag racing with his friends when he was 17. Their response? Boys will be boys. At least he's okay. When I got a parking ticket at 16 for being 6 inches into a fire lane, I was grounded for a month and had to pay the fine from my savings. Different kid, different rule book. Here's another one that still makes my blood boil. When I was 15, I saved up for 6 months to buy a used guitar. Worked odd jobs, mowed lawns, shoveled driveways in winter. Finally had enough for a decent acoustic from the pawn shop. 2 weeks later, Caleb borrowed it for a party, left it in someone's backyard, and it got stolen. My parents' response? Things are just things, Lucas. Don't be so materialistic. But when Caleb lost his phone at that very same party, they bought him the newest iPhone the next day, because he needs it for school. I never got another guitar. And I never asked for anything again, either. I learned my lesson real quick about what family meant in our house. By the time I was in high school, I'd accepted my role. Keep your head down, work hard, expect nothing. I got straight A's, joined every club that would look good on a college application, and started a lawn care business in the summers. I saved every penny because I knew nobody was coming to save me. The thing about Caleb is he wasn't just enabled. He was celebrated for his mediocrity. He'd drop out of community college? He's finding himself. He'd quit another job? Traditional employment isn't for creative minds. He'd move back home at 24 with no plan? Family supports family. I remember one particular family dinner when I was about 14. I'd just gotten my report card, straight A's, honor roll, teacher comments praising my work ethic. I was actually excited to show my parents. Pathetic, I know, but I still wanted their approval back then. I handed the report card to Dad. He glanced at it, nodded, and said, "Good job. Keep it up." Then he turned right back to Caleb, who was explaining why he'd failed his driver's test for the third time. My mom spent 45 minutes reassuring Caleb that the test was unfairly designed and didn't measure real driving ability. My report card sat on the counter, forgotten, until I picked it up myself and put it in my backpack. That was the moment I stopped expecting anything from them. It took me a few more years to stop hoping, but the expecting? That ended right there, over spaghetti and meatballs. Even when I got accepted to 3 different universities, their response was a lukewarm, "That's nice, honey. Can you help your father move the furniture this weekend?" And that, finally, brings us to the real turning point. When I was 16, my grandparents passed away within months of each other. They left behind a modest estate, divided among their children. My parents got about $180,000 after everything was settled. Decent money, enough to make a real difference for a middle-class family. My grandfather, he had always seen me. While my parents were busy praising Caleb's potential, Grandpa would sit with me at his kitchen table, teaching me about budgeting, compound interest, and the value of a dollar saved. He was old school, Depression-era mentality, believed in hard work and fiscal responsibility. Before he passed, he told my parents he wanted $40,000 of his share set aside specifically for my education. Not Caleb's. Mine. He'd watched how things worked in our family and wanted to make sure I had a fair shot. "That boy's got a head for numbers," he told my dad. "Don't let it go to waste." My parents agreed. For about 2 years, that money sat in an account with my name on it, designated for college. I checked it religiously, watching it grow with modest interest, planning which schools I could realistically afford, calculating how much I'd need for room and board. It was the one thing I had that was truly mine. Then Caleb had his eureka moment. He burst into the house one night when I was doing homework, practically vibrating with excitement. He'd discovered the future of retail, personalized subscription boxes. Original, right? This was 2012. Birchbox had just blown up, and suddenly every entrepreneur wannabe with a laptop thought they could replicate it. Caleb's revolutionary idea? Subscription boxes for adventure gear. Basically, you pay $50 a month and get random outdoor equipment. Nobody asked for a compass one month, some paracord the next, maybe a pocket knife if you were lucky. He called it Wildbox. My parents ate it up like it was filet mignon. "This is it," Dad said, eyes practically glowing. "This is what Caleb's been building toward." Building toward what? A lifetime of half-finished projects and borrowed money? But I kept my mouth shut, because at 16, my opinion carried about as much weight as a balloon in a hurricane. The problem was startup costs. Caleb needed $60,000 to really do this right. Inventory, website development, marketing, a warehouse lease, the works. He had a whole presentation with slides and projections that looked impressive, if you didn't know anything about business. My parents had already spent most of their inheritance on renovations and a new car. But there was still that $40,000 sitting in an account. My account. My college fund. The family meeting was called on a Sunday night. That's never a good sign. Nobody calls a family meeting to announce we're going to Disney World. I walked into the living room to find my parents and Caleb arranged like a tribunal. Caleb had his laptop open to his presentation. My stomach dropped. "We need to talk about an investment opportunity," Dad started, using his serious voice. I already knew where this was going. For the next hour, I watched Caleb pitch Wildbox like he was presenting to Shark Tank instead of his own family. Market opportunity, competitive advantages, projected revenue. He threw around buzzwords like disruptive and scalable and first-mover advantage. Then came the ask. "We've decided as a family," Mom said. Notice how I wasn't consulted on this family decision. That supporting Caleb's business is the best use of the college fund. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. That's my money, I said. Grandpa left that for my education. Grandpa would want us to support family entrepreneurship, Dad countered. Besides, Caleb has agreed to pay you back with interest. Once the business takes off, you'll get your money back tenfold. Tenfold. That word would haunt me for years. And if it doesn't take off? I asked. Caleb actually laughed. Dude, have some faith. This is going to be huge. In 2 years, you'll be thanking me for making you an investor. I didn't invest anything, I shot back. You're taking my money. We're borrowing it, Mom corrected. Family helps family. When you're older, you'll understand. I tried everything. I argued. I reasoned. I pointed out that Caleb had never finished anything in his life. I reminded them that Grandpa specifically wanted that money for my education. I asked what happened to teaching responsibility and learning the value of money, things they'd preached to me my entire life while handing Caleb everything he wanted. What about my future? I asked. What about the schools I've been researching? What about the career I've been planning? Dad waved his hand dismissively. Community college is fine. Lots of successful people started there. Then why wasn't community college fine for Caleb? He dropped out of regular college, and you didn't make him go to community college. You let him move back home. That's different. How? How is it different? Nobody had an answer, because there wasn't one. The difference was that I wasn't Caleb. I didn't matter the same way he did. I remember looking at my mom, hoping, stupidly hoping, that she might stand up for me. That some maternal instinct would kick in and she'd say, actually, wait. This isn't fair to our younger son. She didn't even meet my eyes. It's decided, she said quietly. This is what's best for the family. Best for the family. Translation, best for Caleb, as always. It didn't matter. They'd already made up their minds. The next day, they transferred the $40,000 out of my college fund and into Caleb's business account. I wasn't even a co-signer. Turns out, when you're a minor, your parents can do whatever they want with money in your name. The only concession I got was a handwritten IOU from Caleb, promising to repay $40,000 plus 10% interest within 3 years. My dad witnessed it, like that made it legally binding. Spoiler alert, it didn't. I watched my college fund disappear into subscription boxes full of cheap compasses and emergency blankets that nobody wanted. Wildbox lasted exactly 14 months. Caleb burned through that $40,000 like it was kindling. The website alone cost $15,000 because he insisted on custom development instead of using Shopify like a normal person. The inventory was another $20,000, most of which ended up in our parents' garage when the business folded. Marketing ate the rest, Facebook ads that targeted the wrong demographics, Instagram influencers who took his money and delivered nothing. I remember one dinner where Caleb bragged about partnering with an influencer who had 50,000 followers. He paid her $3,000 to post about Wildbox. I asked how many conversions he got from that partnership. What do you mean, conversions? How many of her followers bought subscriptions? He had to check his phone. 4. For subscribers. For $3,000. $750 per customer. His subscription was $50 a month. It would take over a year for each of those customers to pay back the cost of acquiring them, assuming they didn't cancel, which most subscription customers do within 3 months. That's not sustainable, I said. You don't understand brand awareness, he shot back. At its peak, Wildbox had 47 subscribers. 47. Caleb acted like this was a major achievement. "We're growing organically," he'd say during family dinners, which had become insufferable progress updates that I was required to attend. "Once we hit critical mass, it's going to explode." I tried to point out the math once. "Caleb, you have 47 subscribers paying $50 a month. That's $2,350 in revenue. Your overhead is at least $4,000 monthly between the website, warehouse, and inventory costs. You're losing money every single month." He looked at me like I was speaking Martian. "You don't understand startup economics. It's about market penetration first, profit later. That only works if you have outside funding to cover the burn rate. You don't. You have my college fund, which is already mostly gone. Negative energy is why you'll never be an entrepreneur," he shot back. My parents nodded along like he'd said something profound. The only thing that exploded was my future plans. By month 10, Caleb was asking for more money. Just another $10,000 to really scale up the marketing. My parents, who had no more inheritance left, suggested I get a part-time job and contribute my earnings. I told them absolutely not. That was the first time I'd ever directly defied them. And the look on their faces was almost worth the aftermath. "You're being selfish, Lucas," Mom said. "This affects the whole family. My college fund already affected my whole future. I'm not giving anything else." Caleb tried guilt-tripping me directly after that, showing up in my room one night with his laptop, trying to show me analytics dashboards and customer feedback, like I cared about the 5-star review from his college roommate. "If this fails, it's on you," he said. "You could save it, but you're choosing not to." "If this fails," I replied, "it's on you. You took my money against my will and lit it on fire. That's not my responsibility to fix." He called me a piece of work and stormed out. Didn't talk to me for 3 weeks after that, which was honestly the best 3 weeks I'd had in years. At month 14, Caleb announced Wildbox was pivoting, startup speak for failing. He tried to rebrand as a camping equipment review blog, then an outdoor adventure planning service, then finally gave up entirely when the website hosting bill went unpaid and the whole thing got taken down. The warehouse lease broken early with a $4,000 penalty. The inventory donated to Goodwill because nobody would buy it. The investor, me, left with nothing but a worthless IOU and a brother who couldn't even look me in the eye. When I asked about my money, Caleb had a convenient excuse ready. "Business didn't work out, bro. That's the risk of investing." I didn't invest. "You took my college fund." Same thing. Besides, I lost money, too. I was paying myself nothing the whole time. Paying himself nothing while living rent-free at our parents' house, eating their food, driving their car. Real sacrifice there. My parents backed him up completely. "You can't get blood from a stone," Dad said. "Caleb doesn't have the money. What do you want him to do? Get a job and pay me back." He's still recovering from the emotional toll of the business failing. Give him time. Time? Right. Caleb was 20 years old, living at home, playing video games 16 hours a day, and I was supposed to give him time. That was the moment I realized I was completely on my own. No inheritance, no college fund, no family support. Just me and whatever I could build with my own 2 hands. I graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA and $0 for college. My parents' contribution to my future? A pat on the back and a suggestion to start at community college and transfer later. So that's exactly what I did, but not the way they expected. I enrolled in community college, but I also worked full-time. Mornings at a tax preparation office during busy season, evenings at a restaurant. I learned more about finance watching the CPAs work than I did in any classroom. They saw something in me and started letting me help with basic returns. There was this one CPA at the firm, a guy named Arthur, who'd been doing taxes for 30 years. He noticed me staying late, asking questions, actually paying attention to how the work got done. Most interns just wanted to clock their hours and leave. I wanted to understand. "You've got an eye for this," Arthur told me one night while we were sorting through a particularly messy small business return. "Numbers make sense to you." "They're reliable," I said. "They don't play favorites. 2 plus 2 is always 4. Doesn't matter who your parents are or how charming your personality is." Arthur laughed, but something in my tone must have registered. He started giving me more complex tasks, explaining the logic behind tax codes, showing me how to spot inconsistencies. When I mentioned I was putting myself through community college, he wrote me a recommendation letter that probably did more for my future than anything my parents ever did. Every penny went toward tuition and savings. I lived in a room I rented from an elderly lady named Mrs. Jenkins, who gave me a discount in exchange for mowing her lawn and shoveling her driveway. Ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches until I could afford groceries. Mrs. Jenkins was more of a grandmother to me than my actual grandparents had become. She'd leave cookies outside my door sometimes. Never said anything about it. When I got my first A in advanced accounting, she made me a cake. A whole cake, just for me, because I'd mentioned in passing that I never had birthday cakes growing up. "Everyone deserves to be celebrated," she said. I almost cried. Almost. She passed away during my junior year. Left me her old car in her will, a 2003 Honda that burned oil and had a tape deck, but it was mine. The first thing anyone had ever left me that wasn't a burden. My parents thought I was wasting my potential. "You could be home saving money," Mom would say. "Caleb still lives here." Yeah, that was kind of the point. After 2 years of community college, I transferred to a state university with enough credits to finish in 2 more years. I chose accounting because I discovered something during my time at the tax office: I actually loved numbers. Loved the puzzle of it, the way everything had to balance, the satisfaction of finding errors and making things right. I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in accounting and a job offer at a mid-sized CPA firm before I even walked across the stage. My parents didn't come to graduation. They had scheduling conflicts. Caleb had a job interview that day. He didn't get the job, by the way, but at least they prioritized correctly, right? During those 4 years, Caleb went through a fascinating evolution. Failed startup founder became entrepreneur between ventures. That became exploring opportunities. That became consultant, which meant he gave unsolicited business advice to anyone who would listen while still living in our parents' basement. He burned through 3 more jobs, none lasting longer than 4 months. Retail, sales, even a brief stint at a call center that ended when he told a customer their complaint was not his problem. Each time he got fired, my parents found a way to blame the employer. Meanwhile, I was building something real. I passed the CPA exam on my first try, all 4 parts, which is apparently rare. My firm promoted me twice in 3 years. By 27, I was a senior accountant, handling complex corporate returns and actually enjoying it. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my childhood being told I was the responsible one, like it was an insult, a way to justify giving me nothing while Caleb got everything. Now, that responsibility was my greatest asset. Clients loved that I was thorough, reliable, detail-oriented. The best part? I'd saved $85,000, not inherited, not borrowed, earned and saved through discipline and hard work. I bought my own condo in a nice part of the city. Drove a reliable car I'd paid off in 2 years. Had an emergency fund, retirement contributions, and 0 debt. When my parents found out how well I was doing, suddenly I existed again. The calls started coming weekly. "Just checking in," Mom would chirp. "We never hear from you anymore." I wondered why. Then the hints started. "Your father's back has been bothering him. Medical bills are so expensive these days. And the house needs a new roof." But with Caleb still getting on his feet. Always circling back to money. I kept my responses polite but vague. That sounds tough. Hope it works out. Because I knew what was coming. I could smell it from a mile away. Caleb's second business was called Next Level Fitness Tech. And yes, it was just as stupid as it sounds. This time, his brilliant idea was a fitness app that would use AI to create personalized workout plans. Never mind that 100 apps already did this. Never mind that Caleb had never coded a line in his life and couldn't tell a barbell from a kettlebell. He had vision. The pitch came at Thanksgiving dinner, which I'd reluctantly attended after months of guilt-tripping. Caleb set up his laptop at the head of the table like he was presenting to investors instead of family eating turkey. New slides, new buzzwords, same desperate energy. The fitness industry is worth $96 billion, he announced. We only need to capture 0.01% of that market to be millionaires. I almost choked on my mashed potatoes. That's not how market capture works, but Caleb had never let facts get in the way of a good fantasy. His ask this time? $75,000 to develop the app, hire developers, and launch a marketing campaign. Where's that money coming from? I asked, knowing full well. Every eye at the table turned to me. Well, Dad started, we were hoping that since you've done so well for yourself, you might consider investing in your brother's future. There it was. You want me to give Caleb $75,000 for another business? Not give, Caleb corrected. Invest. This is legitimate. I've done the research this time. Like you did research on Wildbox. How'd that work out? The table went silent. We didn't talk about Wildbox. It was the family skeleton that everyone pretended didn't exist. That was different, Caleb said, jaw tight. I was younger. I've learned from my mistakes. Have you? Because you still owe me $40,000 from those mistakes. Mom jumped in with her mediator voice. We've talked about this, sweetie. Caleb couldn't help that the business failed. He's not in a position to. It's been 12 years, Mom. 12. He hasn't paid back a single dollar, and now you want me to hand over more money? It's called believing in family, Dad said, using his disappointed voice. I looked around the table at these people who'd taken my college fund, watched me struggle through school while Caleb played video games, never once acknowledged the unfairness of any of it, and now wanted me to fund round 2 of the Caleb show. No. Simple. Final. One word. What do you mean, no? Caleb asked, genuinely confused, like the concept of being denied was foreign to him. I mean, no. Not happening. I'm not giving you money. This isn't giving. It's investing. You'll get returns. Like the returns I got from Wildbox. The tenfold I was promised. Where's that money, Caleb? I told you, the business failed. That's not my fault. It was your business. Of course it's your fault. Caleb stood up, knocking his chair back. You know what your problem is, Lucas? You're bitter. You've always been bitter because I'm the one with ideas, and you're just the one who's good at math. I'm good at math enough to know you've cost this family over $50,000 with nothing to show for it. I'm good at math enough to build a career while you built excuses. And I'm good at math enough to know that giving you $75,000 would be like setting it on fire. Mom started crying. Dad's face turned red. Caleb looked like he wanted to flip the table. If you don't help your brother, you're not welcome in this house anymore, Dad said. I stood up, grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair, and looked at all 3 of them. Fine. Enjoy Thanksgiving. I hope the turkey's worth it. I walked out before anyone could say anything else. That Thanksgiving was almost a year ago. What happened next was predictable to anyone who's ever watched a family implode in slow motion. Caleb launched Next Level Fitness Tech anyway, funded by credit cards and a small business loan my parents co-signed. The app was buggy, the workouts were generic, and the only users were Caleb himself and a handful of pity downloads from family friends. Within 8 months, the company was hemorrhaging money. Caleb had hired a developer who charged $50,000 for an app that barely functioned, spent another $15,000 on Facebook ads that targeted people who'd already downloaded free fitness apps, and somehow burned through $10,000 on brand development, which apparently meant getting a logo designed. I heard all this secondhand from my cousin Liam, who was still talking to both sides of the family. Caleb had apparently shown up at family barbecues bragging about his tech startup right up until the moment it imploded. Even bought himself a Tesla lease he couldn't afford, because successful entrepreneurs need to project success. The Tesla got repossessed 3 months later. There's a photo of it being loaded onto a flatbed that Liam showed me. Caleb standing on the lawn in his bathrobe, watching his success projection drive away. I won't lie, I saved that photo. The business loan went into default. The credit cards maxed out. And because my parents had co-signed, suddenly their retirement fund was on the chopping block. That's when the desperation calls started. First from Mom, sobbing about losing everything. Please, just help us get through this. It's not about Caleb anymore. It's about your father and me. Then from Dad, trying the stern approach. You have a responsibility to this family. We didn't raise you to abandon us. You're right, I said. You didn't raise me at all. I raised myself while you were busy raising Caleb. He hung up on me. I considered that a win. Then from Caleb himself, attempting something resembling humility. Look, I know I messed up. I know I owe you money, but if you could just help out, I swear I'll pay everything back. I'd heard that song before. My response to all of them was the same. I'm not giving you money. The fallout has been exactly what you'd expect from a family that never learned accountability. Caleb declared bankruptcy last month. Lost everything. Not that he had much to begin with. He's back living with my parents at 31, sleeping in his childhood bedroom, playing the same victim card he's been holding since he was a teenager. My parents are selling their house because they can't afford the mortgage payments after the loan default destroyed their credit. They've had to downsize into an apartment, a major step down from the home they'd lived in for 30 years. They blame me, of course. If you just helped us when we asked, Mom says every time we talk, none of this would have happened. If you hadn't taken my college fund to fund Caleb's first failure, I reply, you have a cushion right now. If you hadn't co-signed his second disaster, you'd still have your house. Every choice you made was about Caleb. The consequences are about Caleb, too. Then things escalated in ways I genuinely didn't expect. After that Thanksgiving, my parents and Caleb kept up the pressure for a few weeks. Calls, texts, emails, even showing up at my condo once. I stopped answering, stopped engaging, and eventually they got the message. Or so I thought. About 2 months ago, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. Is this the CPA firm of my company name? This is their senior accountant. How can I help you? My name is Agent Miller. I'm with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. My stomach dropped. In my line of work, those words are basically, here comes your worst nightmare. I'm calling about a return filed under your name and credentials. We flagged some irregularities. Turns out someone had been filing fraudulent tax returns using my CPA license number. Returns I'd never seen, for clients I'd never met, claiming refunds that went straight into accounts I had no knowledge of. The IRS had traced the IP addresses. 3 guesses who was behind it. Caleb. When I confronted my parents about it, because of course I had to involve them, the whole story came out. Caleb had borrowed some of my old mail that had my license information on it. He'd been running a tax refund fraud scheme for the past 8 months, filing fake returns for people he met online and splitting the refunds with them. He thought he was being clever. He was being a federal criminal. He was just trying to make money. Mom said, like that was a defense. He committed identity theft against me and tax fraud. That's federal prison, Mom. Can't you talk to them? Explain. That it was a misunderstanding? I actually laughed. A misunderstanding? He stole my professional credentials and used them to defraud the government. There's no misunderstanding here. The IRS investigation moved fast after that. Turns out Caleb's clients were mostly fake identities he'd purchased on the dark web. The refunds totaled over $180,000 across dozens of fraudulent returns, all filed under my name. Agent Miller walked me through what Caleb had done. He'd set up a whole operation in my parents' basement, bought stolen social security numbers, created fake W-2s, filed returns claiming massive refunds for people who didn't exist. The refunds went to prepaid debit cards that Caleb would cash out at ATMs all over the city. He was actually pretty sophisticated about it, Miller said. Kept the individual returns under $10,000 to avoid certain flags. Spread them out over months. If he hadn't gotten greedy and used your credentials, he probably could have gotten away with it longer. Why my credentials? CPA-prepared returns get less scrutiny. They look more legitimate. Having your license number on file meant the IRS was less likely to flag them for review. Caleb had been doing this for 8 months. 8 months of federal crimes committed in my parents' house, using my professional identity, and they had no idea. I didn't believe that for a second. Agent Miller was actually sympathetic once I provided all my documentation, proving I had nothing to do with it. My actual client records, my work schedule, the fact that I was in client meetings during times when these fraudulent returns were being filed from an IP address at my parents' house. We see this more often than you'd think, Miller told me. Family members using each other's credentials usually doesn't end well for anyone. Caleb got arrested 3 weeks ago. Federal marshals showed up at my parents' apartment at 6 a.m. and took him away in handcuffs. Mom called me hysterical, demanding I fix this. Fix what? He committed federal crimes. He's your brother. He's a grown man who made his choices. I didn't put those handcuffs on him. The United States government did. She hung up. Called back an hour later, calmer, but still delusional. The lawyer says they might offer a plea deal. If you testified that Caleb had permission to use your credentials. You want me to perjure myself? Commit a federal crime to cover up his federal crimes? It's not perjury if it's exactly perjury, Mom. It's lying under oath. And even if I wanted to help him, which I don't, I'm not going to prison for Caleb. I'm not losing my license for Caleb. I'm not throwing away everything I built for Caleb. You always were selfish. And you always were blind. I guess we're both consistent. The charges are serious. Wire fraud, identity theft, tax fraud, and conspiracy. His public defender says he's looking at 3 to 7 years if he takes a plea deal, more if he goes to trial. The prosecutor apparently has a stack of evidence a foot thick. Transaction records, IP logs, the fake IDs Caleb bought, everything. My parents tried one last Hail Mary. They showed up at my office, my actual workplace, demanding I testify as a character witness for Caleb, in front of my colleagues. My boss, a woman named Eleanor, who had been running the firm for 20 years, had to escort them out. She pulled me into her office afterward. How long has this been going on? I gave her the abbreviated version, the college fund, the businesses, the enabling, the fraud. She just shook her head. I've seen a lot of family dysfunction in this business. Tax season brings out the worst in people, but this. She trailed off. You're handling it well. I've had practice. Take the afternoon off if you need it. I'd rather work. Honestly, numbers don't ask me for money. She laughed. I wasn't entirely joking. That was the final straw. I filed a restraining order against all three of them the next day. The hearing was 2 weeks ago. My parents showed up with a lawyer they couldn't afford, trying to argue that family disputes shouldn't involve the courts. The judge disagreed. The restraining order was granted. 500 feet, no contact, no exceptions. My parents' lawyer tried to make me look like the bad guy. Your Honor, my clients are elderly people going through a difficult time. Their son is facing serious charges. They've lost their home, and now their other son wants to cut them off entirely. This is a family matter, not a criminal one. The judge asked me if I had anything to say. I did. I laid out the timeline, the stolen college fund, the 12 years of broken promises, the second business that destroyed their finances, and finally, the identity theft that could have ended my career and landed me in prison. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady, I've given this family every chance. I've been patient. I've been understanding. I've been the bigger person for over a decade. And every time I did, they took more. They took my money. They took my trust. And most recently, they tried to take my professional license and my freedom. At what point am I allowed to say enough? The judge looked at my parents, then at me, then back at my parents. Restraining order granted. 500 feet. All forms of contact prohibited. Violation will result in arrest. As they were leaving the courthouse, my dad turned and said, "You're dead to us." I said, "I've been dead to you since I was 16. You just didn't notice because you were too busy watching Caleb." That was the last time I saw them. Here's where it stands now. Caleb is in federal custody awaiting trial. His public defender tried to get him out on bail, but the judge denied it. Flight risk, apparently. Caleb had been Googling countries without extradition on his phone. Real subtle. My parents lost their apartment because they couldn't make rent after spending their savings on Caleb's lawyer. Last I heard through Liam, they're living with my aunt in another state. The IRS cleared me completely. My license is intact. My reputation is intact. And my firm actually gave me a raise for handling a difficult situation professionally. Apparently, not losing your mind when your brother tries to destroy your career is a marketable skill. I've started seeing someone, a woman I met at a professional conference. Her name's Sophie. She's a financial analyst. We bonded over spreadsheet jokes, and she knows the whole story. Her response? Sounds like you need better family. Lucky for you, I've got a big one, and they actually like each other. I met her parents last month. Her dad shook my hand. Her mom made me a plate of food without asking if I was hungry. And her brother asked if I wanted to watch the game with him. Normal family stuff that felt completely foreign to me. The first time I had dinner at their house, I didn't know what to do. Nobody was asking for money. Nobody was explaining why someone else's failure was actually my responsibility. They just talked, laughed, asked about my day like they actually wanted to know the answer. Sophie caught me staring at the wall at one point. "You okay?" "Yeah, this is what family is supposed to look like, isn't it?" She squeezed my hand. "This is what your family looks like now, if you want it to be." When I told them about my situation, the abbreviated version, her mom just shook her head and said, "Some people don't deserve the children they get." Her dad was more direct. "You ever need anything, you call us." That's what family does, the real kind. I'm not going to lie and say I don't think about my biological family. I do. But I think about them the way you think about a house you used to live in that burned down. You remember it existed, but you don't want to go back. Caleb's trial is in 4 months. I've been subpoenaed as a witness for the prosecution. The federal attorney walked me through what they need. Timeline of the identity theft, documentation of my credentials, testimony about my relationship with Caleb. Just tell the truth, she said. That's all we need. That's all I've ever done, I replied. She smiled. That's why you're on our side of the courtroom. Do you think I handled this the right way, or was there another choice I should have made?